Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome everyone to Satsang. You can all hear me okay? Perfect. So I think this evening or morning or whatever it is for you, I want to talk a little bit about the nature of form. We live our lives engaged with the world of form. The world of form includes essentially everything that we perceive, doesn't it? Thoughts have form, emotion has form, the body is form, the world is form. But the Heart Sutra in Mahayana Buddhism says form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Pointing directly at the inherent selfless nature of all phenomenon in body, mind, and world. In Advaita, we say, the self is all or everything. Nothing is the self, or no thing is the self. Once again, same pointer. Though we appear to experience throughout the waking state, throughout the dreaming state, all that appears is in the final analysis upon introspection, empty and selfless. This concept, or this pair of concepts, is like an infinity symbol. It causes the mind, if this is contemplated, to keep looping back on itself, crossing over itself, checking itself out, looking at itself, to try to see, where do I exist in all of this? Is any of this real? Is any of this experience real beyond the momentary experiencing of it? Of course, when we are here in the middle of our own life every day, we're not going to deny that we're having an experience. When we stub our toe, we know we're having an experience. If we're feeling a pain in our heart, a loss, an uncertainty, this experience in that moment is genuine, isn't it? It's authentic. We cannot simply say, this doesn't exist and push it away. That toe is not going to allow for that. So the experience that we're having in this moment, for this moment, can be said is real. Can also be said to be empty or possessed only of emptiness. Why? Because this moment that is here now, this experience that we're having now, we are not having now. Or now. This now is eternal. The now of experience is always moving, always changing, coming and going. Whether that now experience is positive, negative, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, it's always shifting. And in this, we can see there is nothing eternal. Nothing which can be pointed to and about which it can be said, that is me. That is mine. But in the world of eternal now, now, there is a presence which, when it's looked at directly, can be seen, has always been here. And through all the ever-changing experiences that were momentarily now and have since gone, the one thing that was here and is still here now is this recognition of self-existence that we call awareness or consciousness. This same awareness or consciousness is the screen or the foundation or the basis for all of the experiencing that seems to go on in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts. But because these experiences in our minds, in our bodies, in our hearts, in the world cannot sustain themselves, they are dependent upon this awareness, which I am, for their existence. Because they cannot sustain themselves, they are said to be empty. And only this eternal knowing, that which is aware now, here now, is all there is. And this eternal knowing shows itself when we cultivate, when we understand clearly that there is nothing in body, mind, or world that needs to be clung to or hung on to or kept. There is no form which contains in its essence the happiness we are looking for. This happiness can only be found in the formless recognition, I am, or I exist. And of course, this I, as you all know, is not referring to the body-mind world complex. This I is the naked form of awareness itself. And so has as its characteristics, as its major characteristic, nothing that can be pointed to and can be said about it. That is me. This awareness, this recognition, I am, is eternally free and lives unsupported by any phenomenon or any characteristic of body, mind, or world. That you are. So in a way, I just want to keep pointing you in the direction, not of your experiences, hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking, and experiencing, not in that direction. Those things go on their own, don't they? You cannot stop your experience. It simply is going on. But you can continually look within your own being for this position, if you will, in which you are simply aware of all that is happening, or of nothing if nothing is happening. Keep coming back to this eternal now. This eternal now does not consist of your memories, your projections, your past, your imaginary future. Consists only of this eternal now, which is the awareness which makes it possible for us to enjoy each other's company, and yet is none of us. Is all of us, and no one in particular. Were you going to come in there, James? No. Okay. I thought you were trying to open your microphone. Hello, Rishi.
Good
Please
morning.
come in.
Thank
Hello.
you. Good morning, Rishiji and all. So I love this explanation that you gave this morning. The one thing that I don't understand is the concept of happiness that seems to be the carrot that we're all kind of wanting to get to. But when I touch on that basic place of awareness, I don't find happiness, because it seems to me that I need something to compare it to make happiness. And I just want to say, as much as I've experienced, I guess I'm content, and more than content. And that's another objective, but to be just in that place.
Yes, and of course, that's what we're always pointing toward, isn't it? But the way in which we're pointing at it in this context of satsang, of course, is by finding some way to use words that help to point the attention, if you will, toward that free, open state that you're referencing. So in that context, what you're calling contentment, I might call happiness, or another person might call bliss. You see, it's not
Yes.
where we're standing right now, you and I, is we are standing on the edge of no words. Yes.
Yes.
The only place to go from here is into free fall. So whatever the experience you are having, yeah, just have the experience.
Thank you.
I myself sort of feel like there are these moments of contentment where there really is nothing emotive about them. But in some way, when the mind thinks about them afterwards, there's this recognition of a sense of peace, of you can say happiness, but it's not the happiness of acquiring something or acquiring a state or realizing something, seeing a long lost loved one or something like that. It's not that kind of emotive happiness. It's more like a calm abiding, a residing in the presence of one's own being. So call it whatever you like.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a happiness of no thingness.
Yes, of no thingness. That's beautiful. That's exactly right. Fully empty, and yet somehow fully full.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Lacking nothing. Yes. Always when we're using words, we're talking on some side of an apparent or imagined duality. And so all the terms that we can use are going to emphasize one side of this subtle duality or the other. But when we enter into this space of no thingness that you're describing, there are no words for that. There is simply this recognition of here-ness, now-ness. This is that eternal now that I was describing. Nothing came before that moment. Nothing will come after it. There is only this. And this is fullness. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Rishiji, can you talk a little bit more about Namaste, dear one?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about the edge of wordlessness? Without
Can you
words.
ask? Can you ask a little bit more specific question, because that the edge of wordlessness is going to take us right over that edge. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you mentioned free fall. You mentioned the edge of wordlessness.
yes.
What we are finding in our relationship is that we don't have a lot of words anymore. And sometimes I miss that. I miss the words, you know.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
nothing,
can,
absolutely. There's nothing wrong with the words unless what's happening, and this is something you can just look into what's going on in your mind when you say, I miss the words, for example. You can look very directly at that thought, I miss the words. And you can ask yourself, what is going on in the mind here now? Because if you look at it very closely, what do you discover about that foundation of that thought?
hmm. Wow. It's a good question. That I would call that a sensei question.
Well, what is there? Can you tell me? Can you describe what is there at the root of that question?
That's the 0 point in the figure 8 for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's in that moment that we can also see the formless nature of thought as it gives voice, gives form to a feeling. The feeling is somehow associated with, sometimes I miss that. There's a feeling at the basis of that. You see, there's a feeling that's there. That feeling is related directly, isn't it, to this sense of me-ness,
Oh, okay.
to a mental to a somehow mental understanding of who I am. I am the person who misses that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You see? Well, if we see this very clearly, then what we can see is that that is one of the foundation points of our personal identity. But when we are standing at that edge of wordlessness, we are actually looking into the emptiness, into the formlessness that Risha and I were just stepping into together. You can see that you're at a tipping point. If you tip this way, you will fall back into some form of the personal identity. That is what expresses itself as the thought, sometimes I miss that.
Mm.
If you are standing at that tipping point into wordlessness, and you simply look the other way, away from this personal view of something, then you look into the infinite.
Mm.
And if at that moment you look deeply into Risha, and she is looking from that perspective also, then you fall into the self together.
Oh, wow. Yes, yes.
If that's your experience, then you can actually experience and see directly that every time any kind of projection comes into the mind, assumption comes into the mind, personal point of view comes into the mind, such as, sometimes I miss that. You are actually going away from that possibility of union in the Supreme at that moment. Not only with another, if you're fortunate enough to have someone like Risha there that you can have that experience with another, but if it's in another circumstance, the same thing is happening, and you now have missed the opportunity to simply disintegrate the personal into the recognition, I am that at every moment, which is thought-free, clear, present, unsupported, and is not veiled in any way by any sort of a thought that says, I want this, don't want that, like this, don't like that. It's not making, there's no opinions about what's going on. There's just the clarity of here, now, full presence. Can you feel that?
That's the free fall.
That's it. And
Wow.
it only feels like free fall, you know, for a period of time. It doesn't feel like an eternal free fall, because the profound experience is this constant sense of here-ness, right? So, you know, that's a very solid place. It's just a here-ness, a now-ness. There's this sense of eternity. Eternity doesn't have boundaries, so it can't fall from up here into here. You see that? So that's another illusion that the mind brings on. But as we're talking here, you know, this is what we're saying, is that when we're talking about these kinds of subtleties, we give expression to these subtleties with a certain kind of word or wording or concept, but that's only so that eventually we can step off the edge of concepts.
Wow.
And then when that truly happens, there is a moment of a sense of free fall, but then it just becomes a free floating awareness, which is not tied. I say is unsupported. Others say is not tied to anything in body, mind, or world.
So actually, instead of free fall, it'd just be floating. I like that description of it better. That seems
Well, you know, the traditional way of putting it is you are just being. Because even floating indicates a certain kind of experience.
comparing
right?
with something.
Yes, where being is just being. You know, all you can say about being is that it is. There's no form to it. There's no definition to it. It simply is. And this is what becomes more and more apparent and firm, and all these other words that makes no sense in another way. I have to look at them. Somebody's commented here. Yes. This comment is, did you all see this? Another way of talking about the basic essential attitude from Krishnamurti. Then when the mind is utterly still, that which is sacred can take place. But of course, being is always taking place, isn't it? Without being, nothing is happening. So without this recognition of consciousness itself, of awareness itself, awareness itself and consciousness itself, these words using kind of interchangeably here, being, consciousness, bliss, you see, there's a way in which we simply cannot define any of what we're pointing toward here and sharing with each other with one word. We almost have to, you know, but we almost have to explain it or expand it into several words: being, consciousness, awareness, bliss, you know. And this is just the natural tendency of the mind to proliferate, but it also is because there's no way to describe the wordless. And the sages have been trying for millennium. And so it can appear that there's more than one definition for that which is, but there is not. Because that which is is only there when all words, all concepts, all experiences are allowed to dissolve in the nature of unborn being.
Hello, Rishi. Jean speaking.
Hello, Jean.
Jean, yeah. I did put this this quote from Krishnamurti
Yes.
because in my experience, to me, what is clearly, well, the way I formulate it these days, since a while, that sats and chit, it's obvious. Being and consciousness, it's obvious. But what he calls the sacred can take place. I would say it's ananda. It's the peace, blissful presence, continuous presence. Because everybody can, and then that's where we have to stay in stillness and silent about
Yes.
the little self.
Yes.
That's all we have to do. When we can talk for hours, but we have to work on this silent and stillness of the mind, the story and all that, and then just relax, open to the bliss. I mean, that's it. And we have always to come back there. And it's no matter whether it's a Muslim formulation, Christian formulation, no matter the formulation, it's the Sat Chit and Ananda, manifest Ananda. And of course, there are situations where you contract, where you this, and then okay, relax, come back, and at some point there's no more little self that contracts that much. I mean, or it doesn't contract very long, you know.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And then this is a never-ending process because this just goes on and this just goes on until the stillness is the dominant experience, and what's happening in the body-mind world complex is barely noticed. It's just out here at the periphery of the stillness, you see. Before that, all of this is drawn into this place of, oh, I am here. Even if I'm saying, oh, I am here in the heart I am still, I am here, and I'm pointing here toward this body. But the here that's being really pointed toward is here. And all the experiences of the body-mind world are rising in that, but they are really at the periphery of that. In the center of that is this still presence, which you're talking about.
Like this week, I had the experiment of a shower breaking and making some damage to the floor, you know, in my apartment. So that's $5,000 going that I have to do. But then I don't put oil on the fire. I mean, it has to be done. It was to be. That's it. I mean, I don't. You know, there's no little me that suffer from it, or they say, oh, it shouldn't be like this, or it should be like that. Oh, it's so sad. No, that's it. That's all. I mean, now I work to arrange it. You know, that's it. And these are some. Test to see where you are at when you have this kind of a situation where, you know, it's because you can be very sad or feel very bad for a long time, and it shouldn't be, but it's a kind of situation. There are many other situations more dramatic than that, but
of course,
yeah, but it is.
So this is what you're referring to is often referred to as a fruit of practice. And so in all of the Eastern traditions, we can say, is that the purpose for realizing the self or awakening or whatever, enlightenment, whatever you want to call this, the purpose for that is not to live some ideal life, but rather for life to live itself and for there to be one of the signposts that you are living from the space of recognition is that level of reactivity to what's happening in body, mind, and world comes way down and is very much subdued. It just isn't there anymore. It's not that things are not happening, you know. It's not that the shower is not flooding the bathroom, or that you know, the computer isn't crashing an hour before you need to do satsang. It's just that there isn't that kind of reactivity that you're talking about, you know.
Yeah.
There isn't that contraction into suffering. The Buddha said the way to freedom was to recognize the difference between suffering and suffering over your suffering. He said suffering is related to having a body. And of course, there's some disagreement about this word. Some people don't want to hear that life is about suffering, but nonetheless, the Buddha's teaching is there is suffering, and then there is suffering over suffering. Suffering is just related to life, the body, mind, having a body, being born, aging, sickness, death. This is just the ordinary experience. We don't even need to call it suffering. This is just the ordinary experience of the body-mind complex. The place that genuine suffering occurs is in this uncontrolled or this mind which lacks insight into its own nature, that then goes ahead and suffers over the shower breaking and the computer dying, and you know. So very good. Yes, keep going. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh who said, suffering is inevitable. Suffering over suffering is not. And of course, this is one of the things that we begin to realize as we open our hearts and open our minds and cultivate and develop the insight capacity that we all have, as we begin to see that much of what we react to and how we react in the world is a choice. And over time, we realize there are certain choices we don't want to make anymore. And so we stop doing that, and our level of reactivity goes way down. Our level of presence goes way up. Our openness expands. Our willingness to suffer over small things becomes less and less. And all of this happens quite naturally as we just keep letting go. As you said, coming back into that stillness, into that still moment. Yeah, this is the nature of practice. And if we do this with great faith, then we also realize that we're not coming back to stillness. Stillness is always there. And when we get involved in any kind of reactivity in the world, we are actually going away from stillness. So we don't have to come back to stillness. We simply have to stop going toward reactivity. Stillness is the underpinning. It's the foundation. It's what's always here. Silence. Ramana said silence. So, yeah. Very good.
Rishiji.
Hello,
Namaste.
Marie.
Hi. So this reactivity, Robert Adams talks about it a lot. He says, simply don't react, don't react. And as I was pondering this, it's so interesting you mentioning this today, is that I realized that reactivity never comes from the self. It's always conditioning. So it's, when I'm reacting to something, it's just, I'm in person, it's conditioning, and it's actually optional. That's another thing that came to my awareness, is that there is at some point also an option not to go, not to follow that rabbit hole.
Yes. And another way of saying it's just conditioning is to say that it derives its energy from a belief in the personal, right? Because at the root of everything that we call conditioning is the belief that me, this me is real. One of the ways we construct the personal is by having experiences throughout our lives and then associating them with the body mind, and then associating that body mind with who I am. This is what conditioning is. So this is through the reference of this is happening to me. That's why there's a reactivity. There's a belief at the basis or the foundation of that there is a me who is that something bad is happening to, or doesn't like what's happening, or wants to change what's happening, or needs to defend itself against what's happening. This is all based in this belief in the personal, that the body mind is a person. And we all know this isn't true. Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us know this isn't true, especially if you've ever been with someone who has passed. If you've been with someone while they were dying, you see instantly at the moment that they pass that they are liberated into freedom. You see immediately that they were not the body mind. The body is still there. They are not. So you have this direct perception that there was nothing personal going on there related to the body mind. And so know yourself to not be this body mind. This is the foundation of Sri Ramana's teaching. Know yourself not to be this body. This is why we ask this question. Who am I? This is always in relation to some experience we're having of the conditioned existence. Some situation arises, and this I don't like, I don't want, I want to keep, I want to push away. So this is why this was the great discovery that Bhagavan made that condensed all of Shankara's teaching into this one question. Who is this I? When you say I, who are you referring to? Whether you say I or not, if there's a reactivity happening, if there's a form of conditioning happening, you are experiencing the belief that you are the body. You are experiencing the belief that you are the mind, you are the emotions. This was his great gift to us, was that he distilled all of that suffering over our suffering into this simple way of simply addressing the idea, is there really a personal self? Who am I? Who am I referring to? Look for that I. If you look for that I, you will return to the source. Returning to the source, you discover not something new, You discover what you already are. And this is not related to you as a conditioned mind body. This is related to the experience of the Supreme, the Self. The reason I keep going back to this thread is because even when we understand something through deep insight, that our reactivity is just based in conditioning, you can feel in that undercurrent the belief that you have in that moment, Marie, that even this I that has had this insight and has understood this reactivity is just about conditioning, there is still that subtle smell, if you will, or aroma of the I am the body belief. So these insights are lovely, but always remember that nobody has these insights. We are always liberated into nothing. It's interesting, isn't it? Each time we come to one of these insights, we are chipping away more and more and more into the belief, I am the body, I am a person, this is real. We are chipping away a little bit more, a little bit more. And interestingly enough, once we begin this return that Jean was talking about, where we return to stillness over and over and over, even without a lot of commentary about it, these insights just start to come one on top of the other. And we begin to experience more and more and more freedom in the stillness. But the way the ego or the personality co-opts that, if you will, is it says, I am having this insight. I have understood this. No, nobody has understood anything. If this is the foundation of the way in which you do your daily return to stillness or your daily practice, as though no one is here doing anything, the pace of your insights actually picks up, because the mind is not trying to identify with them, grasp them, hold them, and vindicate its own existence. Before, it was vindicating itself through suffering and trauma and drama. Now it's vindicating itself through marvelous insights. This is a game that the mind plays. It's not that the insights aren't marvelous. It's that they're not happening for anyone. Come to this as quickly as you can. You are neither sinner nor sage. Huh? We've talked about coming out of the Christian tradition a lot, Marie. So this is one I know you will understand. Come to understand that there is no sinner and there is no sage. Life is just happening. There's nothing personal about it. The quicker you understand this, the faster you move into the recognition that you have always been free. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you all so much for your sharing. It's so beautiful to hear your experiences and to understand something more about each of you in this recognition, coming into this recognition of who you truly are. There's so much joy in the sharing and so much happiness. And I know sometimes for some of you, it's very difficult to share, especially in this kind of format and around with many people that you're unfamiliar with. It's somehow within our own small satsang groups, when we were able to be in person, it was easier when we sort of came to know each other's energies, even if we didn't really know each other, because we were sitting in the same room once a week or once a month together. And this has been a little bit more challenging, but I really appreciate those of you who have found a way to get used to this and to share what your experience is and to bring your doubts and your concerns and your insights into it. Because I'm always reminded, this is what I am telling you because you don't hear these comments, but I am always reminded there isn't a week that goes by that someone doesn't say to me in a one-on-one conversation how much they appreciated so-and-so's comment or the conversation with so-and-so and how that had so much value and meaning for them. Because when you speak what's in your heart, you don't just speak it for yourself, you speak it for other members of our community that maybe didn't even know that they had that question in their mind at that time. But because you spoke what was going on for you at that moment, or you shared your most recent insight, they say, oh, yes, that's the same thing I've been experiencing, or I've recently understood that myself, but I didn't know how to put it in words. So your willingness to step into the space of satsang and be here as an active participant, we can say. Your silence is also an active thing. But when you share your experience and your words and your understanding and your confusion, you also speak for others who are here and didn't know they needed to hear what you had to say, or didn't know they were in their own daily practice or in their own insight practice. They were trying to understand the same things that you are grappling with at this moment. Something I've noticed over the years is that nothing moves through this community one person at a time. When something moves through, I'm the one who's able to see that it's moving through in a wave, because I'm having the same conversation with 5 people that week. And I can see that this wave is going through the whole community. So I am grateful. Thank you for sharing, for being here, for bringing your understanding and your confusion. It's essential for the awakening of all beings.
Rishi, thank you for your words and thank you for your silence.
Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste. Walk in peace. Walk in love. Walk as the self.